My career started as a joke. 1988, New York City. I had this friend, Marlo Minnick, and she and I love making people laugh. But instead of putting real work into this and writing a play or something, we just do it in life. One night, we were out with this other friend of ours, and we had this thought, wouldn't it be funny if we set out a little advice stand on the corner? You know, like Lucy from Peanuts, that advice 5 cents thing. Then Marlo made a good point. Who's even going to give us 5 cents? And free advice on the street corner was born. We gave ourselves a name, the Advice Ladies, and we figured we'd do this just once on a Saturday afternoon. We lugged these steel folding chairs all the way across town and set up on the big shopping street in Soho, West Broadway, at the corner of Broome. We had this little magazine rack upside down as a table, a little vase with a fake flower in it, and I made us a big sign, free advice from a panel of experts. Now, we had an extra chair in case anybody wanted to ask us anything, but we didn't actually think anybody would sit down. I mean, cardboard sign. But it was New York. The sign said free. They lined up around the block. At the end of the day, we were completely exhausted from all of the talking. We were hot and sweaty. We had gross street dirt all over our faces from the trucks going down Broome. But even after we lugged those steel chairs all the way back to Marlo's apartment, we all felt the same way. Best way to describe it? Exhilarated, pumped up, high out of our minds. And no, we weren't snorting anything other than truck fumes on that corner. But the high we got was that super energized kind, the kind where you feel like the world is a great place and anything is possible. That's pretty amazing. Sitting there in that corner, talking our guts out to strangers all afternoon, we didn't even clear 5 cents. But people kept telling us that we'd help them, and hearing that and feeling that really was this incredible high, one that ended up transforming me from feeling kind of lost and not sure what to do with my life to feeling like I could make a difference and actually doing that. The 3 of us kept going up to Soho on Saturdays and giving free advice into the mid-90s. Looking back, I remember my dad grumbling about the free aspect. You just got to make a buck, he'd tell me, worried that his nutbag daughter didn't get that working was supposed to go hand in hand with getting paid. But what my dad didn't realize, and what I didn't quite realize, is how much self-interest there actually is in helping other people for free. It turns out that it's actually in our self-interest to be kind to other people. But as I experienced on that street corner, it's especially in our self-interest to be kind to people who are strangers. In fact, if you want to shrink your own problems, lock your problems in the house and go out and find a stranger with some problem and do some nice little thing to help them. I know, that sounds like the dumbest idea in the world. But check out how it worked for these 5 women with multiple sclerosis. Now, if you've got MS, which is a pretty terrible disease, we won't blame you if you're all, dude, you go help yourself. I got my own problems. But this researcher trained these 5 women in this technique called compassionate listening. She then had them make monthly calls to a bunch of other MS patients and basically listen to them complain. So here are these 5 women setting aside their own problems to listen to these other patients' problems, which I'm sure made the patients feel better. But the patients who really, really felt better were the ones doing the helping. They felt much more able to shrug off stuff that bothered them and to cope when their own MS flared up. But here's the really wild part. In terms of their overall life satisfaction, they were 7 times happier than the patients they'd been helping. Now, it actually makes evolutionary sense that helping is such a feel-good thing. We humans evolved in these tiny hunter-gatherer bands of maybe 25 or 50 people we were always around. This was a seriously harsh environment back then, which is to say, going out for some fast food meant trying to hit an antelope with your spear. So back then, having a reputation as a kind person, as a person who helped other people, would have made you a valuable person to keep around, because we all had to help each other just to stay alive. Now, this mutual kindness, mutual helping thing didn't go out with a loincloth. It's common in communities where everybody knows everybody. Even 100 years ago, people in farm country would do what the Amish still do, throwing what's called a barn raising. The entire community would come together to help build a guy a barn, and then that guy would help the next guy and the next guy. Now, contrast that with today. If you're like a lot of us who live in urban areas, it hardly seems worth it to even go say hi to the new neighbors. They'll probably just move again in 6 months anyway. This is not a recipe for happiness. Not for those new neighbors nobody says boo to, and not for any of us. The problem is our psychological operating system, which is seriously outdated. Basically, we're living in the 21st century with Stone Age minds. So, here we are, psychologically prepared to live in neighborhoods, meaning an environment where everybody knows and helps each other, and we're instead living in these vast strangerhoods. Now, always being around strangers like we are is a problem, because when we see a stranger, we don't see a person we should be helping, we see a person we should be wary of. That's because our empathy system evolved to make us socially stingy to outsiders, dividing people we encounter into us and them. Us would have been people in our little hunter-gatherer band. Them is everybody else, those rotten, creepy strangers. Now, this attitude protected us from both human invaders and the yicky bacterial kind. If people who weren't in our band got close to us, they could kill us or steal our stuff. They might pass on diseases our immune system hadn't seen before, and while it was all, wonder how to fight these buggers off, we'd get really sick and maybe die. Now, back then, there were no police departments, and the doctor was a guy in a leopard miniskirt who'd come shake a dried monkey's paw over you. But these days, we have health maintenance organizations, and if there are takeovers, they're usually done by Wall Street dudes in Brioni suits. So there's really no need for this hating on strangers business. The good news is that there's a way around our us-them psychology. Research finds that we just need to imagine that a stranger is like us in the smallest of ways, like imagining that they like the same diner we do, or imagining that they also have a dog who's silently humiliated by the clothes their idiot owner makes it wear. Coming up with some semi-plausible similarity between ourselves and some stranger is really all it takes for our mind to convert them from stranger to what I call a co-human, meaning somebody we're motivated to do kind things for. Now, when I say kind things, I don't mean you have to buy them a new car. It's little things like noticing they've been looking around the cafe for a newspaper and getting up and offering them yours. Minor good deed on your part, right? Wrong. You've noticed a stranger, noticed that they needed something, and stepped up to help them get it. As a total stranger yourself, this is huge. A small kindness that's no big deal when you do it for somebody you know is an incredibly powerful act when you do it for a stranger. If it's somebody you know, they've got to reciprocate, at least eventually. But kindness for a stranger is like our free advice. You're looking out for somebody you will probably never see again and without expecting anything in return. This means that even a tiny kindness can feel life-shifting for a stranger you do it for. I experienced this myself one day when I heard this howling coming from the city parking lot by my house. I go out to see what the deal is, and I see this woman sitting in a parked car just wailing at the top of her lungs. I ask her, "Are you okay? Did something bad happen to you?" She said her father had died. I never know quite what to say in death situations. I say, "I'm so sorry," and then, can I get you a bottle of water?" She nods, so I say, "I'm going to go get you a bottle of water." And I run back to my house feeling like a total idiot. Her father's dead, and I'm getting her a bottle of water. How this connects, I have no idea, but I said I'd do it, so I did. The moment I handed it to her, it was like I'd flipped a switch. She stopped sobbing, she thanked me, and she started to calm herself. I realized later, of course, it wasn't the water. I could have said, "Can I get you a rock?" What mattered was that another human being, one who didn't even know her, cared that she was suffering and tried to make things better for her. Once again, this goes back to how we are living in these vast strangerhoods. We are just starved for the small kindnesses that would be business as usual in an environment where everybody knows everybody. Say you go to coffee shops a lot like I do. You'll see some frazzled mom pushing a stroller, juggling a kid in one arm and a tray of coffees in the other, who's headed toward the closed door. Give her the 30-second royal treatment. Get up out of your chair and go open the door for her. Especially for somebody having a bad day, a little thing like this can mean so much. Sometimes you'll be helping somebody who's had a whole lot of bad days. Take my writer friend, Wendy McElroy. Wendy was homeless as a teen in Canada after escaping a very violent home situation. Now, this was Ottawa in December, where a warm night's about 21 degrees Fahrenheit. So Wendy would sneak into a church at night to sleep and curl up in this shivering little ball on one of the back pews. One morning, she woke up and she was surprised to find that she wasn't freezing cold. Somebody had put a blanket on her, respecting her desire to stay out of the social services loop, but wanting her to be warm. Wendy was just blown away by this. Here's a girl who said about her biological family, "I had stopped expecting kindness from people who were supposed to love me. I knew they would be cruel instead." Wendy called being given that blanket an act of pure goodness from a stranger who expected nothing from her in return. In Wendy's words, that blanket helped me to believe in other people again. Wendy never met the person who did this for her, but she said, "I have thought about that blanket for decades." So nobody gave her $1 million. They changed her life and her whole outlook on other people by giving her an old blanket. That blanket is such a great metaphor. We all just need to get in the habit of making the world a less chilly place for strangers as we go about our day. To understand how great doing this feels, try something for a week. For an entire week, commit to doing at least one kind act a day for some stranger. But don't just do the same thing every time. Figure out what somebody needs in a particular moment. I predict that you will feel that incredible buzz when some stranger just can't believe how kind you were to them, and you'll want to keep going back for more. And suddenly, you will start seeing opportunities to do these small kindnesses, to be a co-human where you never would have before. The way I see it, a bare minimum of one kind act a day should be our self-imposed cover charge for living in this world. Because, after all, we get the society we create or the society we let happen to us. And each of us gets the life we create or the life we let happen to us. What this ultimately means is that living happily ever after is something we can choose to do. It just takes living meaningfully ever after, one kind act at a time. Thank you.